Today we're working on some cozy fall decor. Welcome to the Chic Show. Today is the first of the month playlist hosted by Rustic and Lace DIY and Krista's Crafty Life. Check out their channels in the description box along with the playlist. For project number 1, I'm using some of these silk fall leaves and I'm going to be painting them. I'm giving them a coat of just some Waverly, I think it's truffle paint, and I'm going back and forth between using the paint and using the paint dipped in water. To me, this gives them more of a realistic look, especially once they're dry. Once the leaves are dry, I did take a styrofoam cone from Dollar Tree and I gave it a coat of the truffle chalk paint as well, just in case I missed some spaces somewhere. I didn't want that white shining through. Now I'm just trying to decide how many leaves are going to fit around the bottom. Of course, it's going to be less as you go up, but I'm going to kind of place them where I want them, and then I'll attach them with a little bit of low temperature hot glue. I'm also kind of alternating the colors. Each leaf turned out a little bit different, so they look much more natural than they did before. So I'm just alternating the leaves all the way up the cone. Did leave the leaves hanging off the bottom just a little bit, and once I'm to the top, I'm going to flip the leaves over and have them angle towards the top to make the top of the tree. This is also a good time to see if there are any places that you need to go back and add just a dab of hot glue to fill in the gaps. Now this little fall leaf tree is complete, and I placed it on top of a piece of an old brass lamp that I had. Project number 2 is inspired by this wreath that I found online. I think it was Kirkland's, but I'm really not sure. It may have been just something that I Googled. I'm going to make this project my own, so I used one of the wood bead wreaths from Dollar Tree that I had spray painted black previously, and one of these planked wood leaves also from Dollar Tree. And I filled in the holes and then sanded those back, and now I'm just using some Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water to stain the leaf. I didn't want it to be too dark, but I did add a little bit too much water, so it's a little lighter than I wanted, so I kept going over it a few times until I got it the way I wanted it. Now this is one of Dollar Tree's little wood stickers that come in a pack with several other words, and I'm going to be painting it black and adding it to my wreath. Now I'm going to kind of play with where I want my hello and where I want my fall letters. So these are some of IOD's letter stamps, and I'm going to be spelling out the word fall and using a black ink pad. Next, I took a piece of jute twine and I looped it around and added it to the top of the wood wreath. Now I'm adding on my leaf, and I'm just using some hot glue and attaching it in those places that it actually makes contact with the wreath. This project is inspired by Holly Lamb at Lamb Living. I'll be sure and leave her channel in the description box below. She made this beautiful summer welcome sign from some napkins from Dollar Tree as well as some letters from Dollar Tree. I'm going to be using this long cutting board from Dollar Tree. I'm going to give it a coat of plaster paint. Now what Holly did for her letters, she used some of the Shore Living letters that spelled out relax. I think there was one that said ocean, things like that. So I bought all of those packs too and thought I'm going to do something like this as well because it was such a neat idea and the letters are really cutely shaped. So there wasn't an F in any of the packs, so I'm going to cut one of the E's down to make an F, and of course I'm going to be using 2 L's and then a leaf for the A. Now each of these letters will also get a coat of Waverly chalk paint in plaster. They're really dry, so I spritzed them with a little bit of water first, hoping that my paint, which is kind of dried out, would spread a little bit easier. Now this doesn't have to be a perfect coat on the F or the leaf because there are no black lines, but the 2 L's have black lines, so they did take a couple of coats to cover. Once those are covered, I'll let them dry and then we'll get out this napkin. I'm using this pumpkin napkin from Dollar Tree. I did have some that had leaves on them. Can't find them, of course. I did find it when it was completely finished, but instead I'm going to be using these pumpkins. I love the colors on them, so I decided exactly which part I wanted on each letter, and I did want that plaid part to be consistent at the bottom of all of my letters. So I gave all my letters a coat of Mod Podge and I let it dry, and then I placed the piece of napkin down onto the letter with some Teflon paper on top, and then used my heat press, my mini heat press, to iron on the letters. This warms up the Mod Podge and you have absolutely no wrinkles with this method. Once the letters are cooled, I did take my finger sander and I sanded off the excess napkin. Now with the napkins, remember you always need to remove all the plies except for one that has a design on it. Now for my leaf, I thought I would use this, I think it's Dusk by Waverly, but it's kind of watery even though I had already shaken it up. So I decided I would go over it with a little bit of Antique Wax, also by Waverly, but I didn't really like the way that looked. So I'm going to coat it again, but this time I'm using some milk paint, and it's Solstice Blue, and I'm mixing that together, and I did end up adding just a little bit of green because it was a little too blue for the napkins. The green that I added was Stockholm Green, and these milk paints came from Julie's Designs and Signs in her Color of the Month club. Now, once I have this milk paint on here, I let it dry and then I add another coat. And of course, the thicker the paint is, the more chance you'll have of it crackling. So I used my heat gun and I did make it crackle a little bit. Now I want to bring some of those crackles out. So I'm going to go over it with some Jolie's clear wax, and then I'll use some of Jolie's dark wax, and that will help those crackles to show a little bit better and give it some age, but it's a lot easier to rub on and rub off if you get too much if you use that clear wax first. Now I'm going to go over my fall letters with another coat of Mod Podge. And here's how they all look when they are complete. And now we can add them to the cutting board. Once I'm sure of my placement, I did use hot glue for this. The hot glue holds just fine for this project. Although this is pretty like it is, I thought it was a little bit too stale or sterile, just too clean. So I went around it with my finger sander and I sanded around all of the edges, and then I went back with some Jolie's dark wax just to give it some age and some definition around the edges of the letters and the edges of the sign. Once I was happy with the look, I added a piece of an old belt that I thrifted for the hanger at the top. Holly, if you're watching, thank you so much for this wonderful idea. I also want to take a minute to say thank you to Brenda and Krista for always hosting this monthly playlist. And be sure and check out their channels and the playlist in the description box below. Here's another video I think you might like. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic. Bye now.